I mean, suddenly he's told, here it is, it's coming right at you. The Vulcan fired first at bogey 1. All the Vulcan rounds struck bogey 1. Remember, we're talking about 6,000 rounds of 20 millimeter. Bogey 1 crashed in a field west of Ramstein. Bogey 1 was on the ground, but didn't seem to be damaged. Did the Soviet Union just send in a nuclear bomb in the form of a flying saucer? Hello, my name is Richard Doty. I'm a former intelligence officer with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. In 1974, Ramstein Air Base in West Germany was home to the United States Air Force European headquarters. The base also contained Detachment 1, 512th Tactical Fighter Squadron. Tactical Fighter Squadron contained F-4 aircraft that protected the base and protected the surrounding areas from enemy attack. To protect the base from an air attack, the 4th Platoon Bravo Company was deployed in the mountain pass northeast of the airbase. 6 miles southeast of the base was the Air Defense Operations Center, or abbreviated ADOC. The air defense system protecting Ramstein Air Base contained 2 weapon systems: a Vulcan cannon firing 20 millimeter rounds in the air for low flying, and a Chaparral missile system that could knock down anything that was higher. At 22:30 hours on May 23rd of 1974, the ADAC informed the Army Air Defense Unit that an object was tracked on radar flying towards Ramstein Air Base. The object was designated Bogey 1. The Army unit was informed Bogey 1 was flying at 6,000 feet and did not identify itself. The Army unit immediately went into Red Option 1, which meant all air defense systems were activated. After all attempts to identify the bogey failed, the commander authorized the Army unit to shoot down Bogey 1. Both Chaparral and Vulcan systems locked onto Bogey 1. However, at 22:47 hours, just a few minutes later, Bogey 1 disappeared from radar. Now, this bogey left the radar screen and might have landed just north of Ramstein Air Base. So immediately, ADAC notified the Ramstein Air Base command post that this craft left the radar and might have landed. So security forces at Ramstein was notified to search the area for Bogey 1. Now, the security force would have been the Air Force security police personnel, combat trained with heavy weapons and heavy vehicles, going out there and trying to locate where this landed. Now, this is over an hour later. ADAC advised the Army Defense Command that Bogey 1 was flying directly at their location, 16 miles away at 2,900 feet. Now, what happened between that almost 2-hour period of time? We don't know. Now, you can just imagine what the commander of that air defense system thought, how he was going to prepare. I mean, suddenly he's told, here it is, it's coming right at you. Both the Chaparral and the Vulcan system locked onto Bogey 1. The Vulcan fired first at Bogey 1. All the Vulcan rounds struck Bogey 1. Bogey 1 continued to fly, at which time the Chaparral missiles was activated and fired at the bogey. Hitting the bogey, a second Vulcan system fired another 6 rounds. Remember, we're talking about 6,000 rounds of 20 millimeter. Bogey 1 crashed in a field west of Ramstein. It fell in a field some distance away from the air defense artillery personnel, and again, west of Ramstein Air Base. In a large field, the closest community would have been the village of Ramstein, which would have been north of where this craft landed. 1:43 a.m., a German police patrol arrived at the crash site. The German police patrol was accompanied by an Air Force security policeman. Bogey 1 was on the ground, but didn't seem to be damaged. The ground around Bogey 1 was on fire, the grass around it. German fire units arrived on scene. Now this presented another problem. These German fire personnel, it wasn't American fire personnel, remember German, this is outside Ramstein Air Base. They had no idea what this object was, nor were they ever briefed on what this object was. The object wasn't on fire, the ground around it was on fire. So somehow the crash of this UFO ignited the surrounding grassland. Ground assault units of the 32nd arrived on scene. The artillery, the air defense artillery unit, also had an attack force. The Army Assault Team commander described Bogey 1 as being elliptical in shape, 20 feet in diameter. There were no windows or doors. Bogey 1 did not contain any emblems or other markings. There was a bluish light emitted from the bottom of the craft. Now, if you were the commander, can you just imagine reporting this back to the command post? We got a flying saucer here. What do we do with it? And I'm not making that up. That's actually was recorded on tape of what the commander said. We have a flying saucer here. What are we supposed to do? How do we treat it? Now, this bluish light being emitted from under the aircraft scared a lot of people, not just that commander of that assault team, but also the fire personnel. They didn't know if this thing was harmful. Was it emitting radiation? Was there some sort of a ray gun being emitted? They were scared. Fearing the craft could be a nuclear weapon, and again, we don't know what this thing is. Did the Soviet Union just send in a nuclear bomb in a form of a flying saucer? Those thoughts were going through a lot of people's minds. From the ground commander on scene, to the ADAX commander, to the commander of the US Air Force in Europe at the command post at Ramstein, to the commander of SHAPE. SHAPE is in Belgium. It's the controlling mechanism for all of the US military forces and NATO forces in Europe. He's a 4-star general. He's being briefed on this. What do we do? How do we handle this? Well, once the ground commander notified him that could this be a nuclear weapon, the withdrawing distance was increased. The perimeter around it was increased. They immediately then notified the explosive ordnance disposal personnel, or the EOD personnel, the bomb team, so to speak. About 3 hours later, an explosive ordnance disposal team specialists from Mies Army Depot, which was adjacent to Ramstein, arrived. They set up equipment around the UFO. They analyzing equipment to detect radiation, detect whether this could be a nuclear weapon. Assistance came from the Air Force EOD unit at Capone Barracks, which was a few miles away from Ramstein Air Base. Again, they didn't really know what to do with it. They didn't detect, the EOD personnel didn't detect any radiation being emitted from the craft. Now, this blue light was still appearing on the bottom of the craft, and they couldn't determine what that blue light was. Finally, the commander of US Air Force Europe authorized the EOD and Army combat units to try to enter the craft. So an assault team made of US Army infantry personnel, and I'm going to say this, and I'm try to explain that later, specially trained to handle these type of incidents. Now, who were these specially trained Army infantry units? Well, it took me a long time to figure that out. But we actually had Special Forces personnel back in those days, Army Special Forces. We didn't have Delta Force until the late 70s, but we had U.S. Army Green Berets. They were Special Forces. We had U.S. Army Rangers. They were also Special Forces. But there was a Special Forces team at a base near Ramstein, Army base near Ramstein, that sent a special team to the area. At 7 o'clock in the morning, an assault team, along with EOD, entered the aircraft, or the spacecraft, from the bottom hatch. Now, EOD personnel had to blow open something, use explosives, but ironically, it wasn't difficult to open this. And what they'd find, what do you think they found? They found 4 non-human bodies. Yes, bodies. These ETs were dead. They searched the interior of the craft, found that there were no other non-humans, and then they exited the craft. At 9 o'clock in the morning, personnel from the U.S. Army 650th Military Intelligence Group and the U.S. Air Force Detachment 7024th Office of Special Investigations agents, that's AFOSI, arrived at scene and took control. The non-human bodies were placed in body bags and removed from the scene. The craft was transported on a flatbed to Ramstein Air Base and stored in a hangar. On May 26th, a C-5 U.S. Air Force cargo aircraft flew the craft and the bodies to Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. The story was featured in several UFO specials in the 1980s. Again, the location was never mentioned. It was just told that a craft was shot down, but again, the location was never mentioned. Now jump ahead to 2010 UFO convention in Laughlin, Nevada. Robert Dean, Command Sergeant Major of the United States Army, retired, gave a briefing on this incident with more details. But again, the locations were never mentioned. And so jump again to another UFO convention at 2018, which I spoke. In a private meeting involving several UFO insiders, so to speak, the location was told. An actual document, a FOIA document, was received. But again, this FOIA document was heavily redacted and the exact location was blacked out. So we know this happened. Now I have to jump back to my time at Area 51. I was at Area 51 twice during the middle 80s. I was a counterintelligence officer there on temporary duty. I was replacing another Air Force agent who had been sick, so I came in to replace him, doing his duties. I read a document then, which was highly classified, which pertained to this incident. I couldn't talk about it before, but now that it's out in the public, I can talk about it. This craft that was brought to Area 51 in the 70s was still there. But now, in 84, when I was there, 1984, they were able to actually fly this craft. How they did it, I don't know. I wasn't briefed into research and development or technical or scientific data. I was an intelligence officer. I had access to some of the information, but not all of it. The bodies that were recovered from inside this craft that was shot down near Ramstein Air Base, West Germany in 1974, were still there in a cryogenic chamber. I had the opportunity to see pictures of these two bodies, but I was never able to actually go in and learn anything more about it. So this incident really happened. You can do some Googling. There is a full statement on the record, so to speak, on the internet by the lieutenant who was the commander, speaking about this incident, describing it in his own words, which is certainly more detailed than my 30-minute presentation could give you. But I suggest you go out.
If you like this video and you want to see more amazing content, go ahead and check out the next video on our channel.